I had a chance to read a book the other day. It had contagion in its title. It talked about the world changing in front of us. And it talked about a situation in which we have tremendous job losses, much unemployment, and people not having enough work and not having something to return to. And under that scenario, there was a wide swath of the population that became dependent on government assistance because people just couldn't survive without that governmental assistance. In fact, the book talked about the possibility of having some kind of payments to people, something like universal basic income that Andrew Yang talked about during the presidential campaign. And as a result of all the spending on people to make sure that they survived, the government went into a great deficit, and we already had a deficit to begin with, and now this just made everything worse. And you can imagine the national and global social dislocation from all of that. The interesting aspect of that book is that it was written in 2019, not 2020. It was not talking about COVID. It was talking about artificial intelligence and the impact that artificial intelligence will have on people. So even before the COVID-19 incident that we've had, the global pandemic, people were worried about the kinds of things that we're seeing with COVID-19, except that it had to do with artificial intelligence. I also want to flip back to the 1990s. I want to tell you a story, which is I was having breakfast one day and I was having Frosted Flakes, as a matter of fact. And this was around the time of the very beginning of the internet. It was like 1994 or 1995, something like that. And people around the office where I worked, they thought the internet was kind of a fun thing, or that it was a hobby, as some hobbyists were getting into it, but people didn't really take it that seriously at the time. But I thought this is a really important development. And I was just eating my Frosted Flakes, and lo and behold, what I saw was a URL. This is today's Frosted Flakes, but on the day that I saw this box, I saw a URL and I said, wow, this is real. This is not just a fad. This is not just a hobby. This is real business. And I think this is going to make a tremendous impact on society. So fast forward to today's world, or more recent world, I had Frosted Flakes moments when, as I'm pumping gas at the 76 station in Los Altos, I'm seeing these autonomous vehicles going up and down the street. And it happens to be that I live down the street from, I live near San Antonio Road, and San Antonio Road is where the Waymo garage is. The Waymo is this subsidiary of Alphabet, which is part of the Google enterprise. So Waymo wakes up, it used to be Google, now it's Waymo. They call themselves, the autonomous vehicle division calls themselves Waymo, and their garage is down the street. So I'm seeing these vans going up and down the street constantly. And so I feel like I'm in the autonomous vehicle capital of the world. So that,
Steve, can I interrupt you? So it looks like the slides aren't advancing like we did in the prep. Do you see on your screen that yours are advancing?
Yeah. Let's do it this way.
Oh, you did. Okay, now it looks like they did work. It is.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if you saw the Frosted Flakes, but this is the URL. This is the Waymo van that people see, and I tell people I live in the autonomous vehicle capital world, but we live in a world full of robots, and we have these, like at the top we have the suitcase robot, or the telepresence robot, or the sweeper that sweeps your floors. It may be that baseball will be calling balls and strikes at some point with robots. And this James Bond film was filmed with a drone. So we're using them all the time. We have artificial intelligence systems for ferreting out fraud and doing our banking, and automated trading systems. But one of the things I think about is the importance of artificial intelligence. And when I read Stuart Russell's book this past year, he wrote the premier textbook on artificial intelligence. And this is what he said about artificial intelligence. It's pervasive today, dominant in the future. And if we have super intelligence or artificial general intelligence, it would be the biggest event in human history. And I saw I read another book, Kai-Fu Lee's book. He's a venture capitalist in China. He's started a lot of companies to work for Google, Microsoft, and Apple. And this is what he said about artificial intelligence: changed the world more than anything in the history of mankind, more than electricity. So this is a big development in our society, and we're just getting started. We're just in its infancy. What I tell people about when I give these talks, I say, we have artificial intelligence robotics today. It's here, it's growing, and it's going to have a tremendous impact. Now, some of that impact is going to be tremendously positive, miraculous in some views. And in other aspects of it, it's going to have terrifying results. And we're going to have a lot of legal issues as a result of all these developments. And all of us play a role to make sure that the development, the sale, the purchase, the operation of artificial intelligence and robotic systems take place in an ethical, legally compliant, and safe manner. So what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is a field of computer science. It is believed to have started in the 1956 Dartmouth conference with some academics who started thinking about being able to automate human processes. And I like to think of AI, the shorthand definition is machines simulating features of human intelligence. The machines perceive some action in the world, perceive some data, like it's video or audio. They figure out what's going on, and then they take action as in response. It's not consciousness in human sense, but it's processing information and then taking action based on it. And this is a big deal. So we take it seriously. But when we talk about what does an artificial intelligence and robotics lawyer do, this is what my practice looks like. I help companies with their transactions. So it may be a robot sale contract. It may be helping to negotiate a software as a service agreement where the AI is being delivered as a software service. I work on compliance, where I tell companies what you need to do to comply with specific laws, some of which are AI specific, some of which are more general. I help companies think about liability, and there are litigation cases about this stuff. I'm working on one case right now having to do with the claim that a robotic system doesn't work as advertised, and the other side says yes it does. So we have a dispute over whether the robotic technology is actually working. Liability can also mean accidents and data breaches. I'm also working on investigations and incident response, a lot of data breaches, not having to do with robotics necessarily, but working on data breaches. And then in the future, we're going to have AI incidents where some biased outcome occurred. And so you have to look into what happened, what went wrong, or there might be an autonomous vehicle accident. So these would be examples of this. And then governance. Today, I'm writing a lot of privacy policies and security policies. But in the future, we'll be talking about AI impact assessments or AI impact statements. So this is what an AI law practice looks like today. But to give you a concrete idea of what we're talking about, I'm going to quickly go through some examples of technology. There's nothing better to understand how the technology works and what is the technology than to show you examples and explain a little bit of the examples. When I'm telling you these examples, remember also that what we're talking about is the infancy of AI and robotics in a lot of ways. Even though we've had it for decades, we're still getting started with things. I hearken back on an example to say, I don't know if you remember from the 1970s, you used to play Pong, the video game. Well, nowadays video games are almost photorealistic. That's the difference that a few decades can make in terms of the development of a particular technology. So what I'm showing you is the equivalent of the Pong games. It's not very advanced compared to what we're going to have in future decades. So when we think about artificial intelligence, a lot of people think that this is what we're talking about, the Terminator scenario, but that's not actually what we're talking about. What we're talking about are things like driverless cars. I showed you the Waymo vans at the beginning. That's the current iteration of Google's autonomous vehicles, Google Waymo. This is an older Waymo vehicle. The interesting thing about this driverless car is the person who's operating it is legally blind, and he's able to operate the car. Tesla is another example of automation. It's an advanced driver assistance system. It's not meant to substitute completely for human judgment. Humans are supposed to still pay attention on the road, but a lot of people can just monitor the system, hold their hands on the wheel, and let the car drive itself. We are at that point with the Tesla vehicles. We may have future modes of automation. Bill, you may be interested to know that there's a company in Santa Cruz that's working on a drone to carry people, almost like a helicopter, takeoff and landing drone, to go from Santa Cruz into San Jose. So that's the kind of future mode of transportation we would have. And of course, AI would help to navigate these vehicles. In terms of robotics, Amazon wants to deliver packages to your doorstep by air. We're not quite at that point in terms of FAA authorization to allow those types of deliveries to happen. This was a 60 Minutes segment where Jeff Bezos was talking about their ambition to do, Amazon's ambition to do that. But if it's not by air, maybe it's by ground. I took this picture when we were doing a college visit at the University of Pittsburgh. The Starship Technologies has these little ground drones that are delivering things to people and running around the campus. You could fit about 2 bags of groceries inside of that. Service robots. This is a Boston Dynamics Atlas robot that can lift things and move things around a warehouse setting. Stanford Mall has a security robot that looks kind of like this, that's taking video and audio, and people who are monitoring that video feed and audio feed can become alerted if something is going wrong. We have warehouse robots. This is an Amazon warehouse where these vehicles can move stacks of things around the warehouse to move packages to where they get to the point where they're packed and delivered. We'll have autonomous farm equipment like this combine here that people can control with their mobile phones to make farming more efficient. Or around the house, it could be a sweeper, it could be a lawnmower, something like that, where we have the autonomous household service robot. This was taken, I believe, in the Narita airport in Japan, where you have a concierge robot to help you around to find shops within the airport or to find a place to eat. There's one in San Jose airport as well. Retail robots would help you in the future to be able to pick out clothes, help direct you to particular products that you're looking for. This is a picture I took in the San Francisco airport. This is a robotic arm that can make all kinds of coffee drinks. So it's an automated coffee kiosk, and it's here today. Inventory robots are tracking packages, tracking inventory to find out, okay, we need to order more of this product or that product. So it would go up and down the aisles and monitor the shelves to see whether people need to add more to the shelves. And we have the Pepper robot, SoftBank's Pepper robot, that is like a mascot. It can do things like when you walk into the bank in Belgium, there might be a Pepper robot that says, "Hey, greetings and welcome to our bank, and are you interested in opening a savings account?" Siri, everybody knows Siri, Cortana, Alexa. We've got these electronic agents that do things for us. They can play music, they can answer trivia questions, they can order products for us. So these electronic agents are becoming more and more powerful all the time. These are driven by artificial intelligence. Erica is this image here. Erica is the Bank of America automated chatbot that can help you when you use your mobile app, the Bank of America mobile app. You might want to ask, what's my savings account balance today? Or can I apply for this credit card? Something like that. So Erica will help you out with those kinds of things. You can apply for loans and get evaluated for possible credit with automated processes today. And of course, IBM has Watson. So they're using Watson for a lot of very complicated problems. You may have heard about Watson competing on Jeopardy. That was sort of a showcase project, but it also does a lot of things like working in the healthcare field to help out with differential diagnosis. So we have very large-scale artificial intelligence systems that are helping to do all kinds of tasks today. We'll talk about some like automated trading systems to buy and trade stocks. When certain price points are hit, the algorithm knows to buy or to sell, something like that. This company is called Beam, and it is involved in authenticating people who are doing business over the internet and also trying to ferret out money laundering. So it's using artificial intelligence to notice patterns of fraud. There's something called robotic process automation. This means taking a manual business process and having automation and an artificial intelligence be able to do it. It might be something like processing checks in the back office when a bank is trying to clear a check, and having the software do that process where it used to be that humans used to do that process. So it's making business back office functions a lot more efficient. We're starting to use artificial intelligence for investigations. So you can imagine a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act investigation where the machines are trying to find patterns of unauthorized payments like bribes, and it can notice by looking at transactional data some patterns that might indicate patterns of fraud that can then be looked into by human investigators. I like to tell the story about a Target where a young woman received a postcard in the mail. It was for maternity wear. And her father was totally incensed, complained to Target, and basically said, "How dare you send this card to my daughter? She is just a teenager." Well, as it turns out, Target knew before Dad did that his teen daughter was actually expecting at that time. And Target noticed the pattern of behavior of her purchases and made an inference that maybe she was expecting, and then for that reason sent her the card. I also wanted to, if you could take a look at the screen for a second, there's something called generative adversarial networks. The person who appears in this photo is actually not real. This was generated by a computer based on digesting many photos and then spitting out new examples of people's faces. And this is a process, I won't go into the technical details, but these types of artificial intelligence systems are generative adversarial networks. That is, you kind of have two networks competing to make each other better, to create better and better images of something or better facsimiles of something. And the way it's shaking out is people are using GANs to create fake videos and pictures. Obviously, this was an example of a picture, but this would be a video. And I'm not going to show you the video, but Jordan Peele, who's a comedian, recorded audio, and the audio was playing while the video of President Obama was apparently moving his mouth in sync with the sound that Peele was making. And Peele essentially made Barack Obama say things that he otherwise wouldn't say. So this is a big concern for the government. It's something that people are worried about in the future. Imagine if we had a fake video of some national leader saying things that were totally incendiary. It could create chaos as a result of that. We also have immense amounts of data from smart and connected devices like a pacemaker, smart city applications, home applications, your automobile, smart meters, and retail settings. So all of these are creating a lot of data which can then be digested by artificial intelligence systems and predictions made or recommendations made or actions taken. In the medical field, artificial intelligence and robotics have big applications. So this is a smart scalpel when, as the tissue is cutting around a cancerous lesion, the scalpel is ingesting the tissue and a machine is basically saying, okay, you're cutting outside of the lesion now, or you're still in the lesion. So it can kind of help guide the surgeon to cut only the lesion. We are using artificial intelligence to do fast genomic sequencing to be able to identify potential genetic abnormalities that may lead to problems. And there's a famous book called Deep Medicine. Dr. Eric Topol wrote the book, and he talks about at the beginning of the story of a young boy who's like 8 days old. He had some seizures, and the doctors were able to do some fast genetic sequencing and figure out what it was, what genetic abnormality he had, and basically saved his life as a result of this fast genetic sequencing. We have surgical robots that can do operations in a much more precise fashion than humans can with their hands. This particular robot is now owned by Johnson & Johnson. This company is owned by Johnson & Johnson. It sends a probe into your lungs to the endpoints of your lungs to be able to collect biopsy samples. And the robot is guided through your lungs with the help of a human. We will also, in Japan, people are very interested in elder care because the younger generation isn't necessarily around to help older folks. So creating robots to help lift people up and put them back down and carry them around, those kinds of robots are under development in Japan right now. In the hospital setting, we also have these robots that can take bed sheets and supplies from one area of the hospital to another without a human having to do that. And think about today's COVID virus. We have these telepresence medical robots where somebody in the examining room can put a stethoscope on a patient, and a doctor who is remote, doesn't have to be exposed to the patient, can talk to the patient and then watch the readings or hear the readings, hear the stethoscope sounds remotely through this telepresence. And in China, there is actually a hospital that is being completely, there are people there in the hospital, but there are many robots that are taking over the functions of human beings to prevent exposure to COVID-19. The one on the left is carrying things around the hospital. The one on the right is more of a mascot robot. It will bring food to people. It will dance for people. So they're doing a little dance on the right side, kind of entertaining people, raise their spirits. But there are many applications for artificial intelligence in medicine, predicting people's lifespan, predicting the usage of hospital resources, watching people around the hospital to make sure that they're washing their hands properly, even monitoring people, differential diagnosis, trying to figure out what people have in terms of their conditions, looking at clinical studies to find out which clinical studies might be applicable to particular clinical patients. There are many possible applications. The book Deep Medicine I recommended in case you're interested in this area of artificial intelligence. And when you talk about the COVID-19 virus, people are looking at artificial intelligence to track what's going on, predict progression. And there's a system in China that can look at people's faces and they're trying to detect whether people have fever or not. Stanford has a system to try to monitor respiratory function and sleep patterns of elder folks who might be at risk with COVID-19. So the human-centered AI program within Stanford is trying to develop this as a research project. And then looking at trying to create new treatments to accelerate the process of new treatments and vaccine discovery. So AI is working even with COVID-19. We'll have nanobots at some point within the next decades that will flow through our bloodstream to help deliver medication or to do diagnosis of illness and to image whatever's going on. So we were trying to move into the area of nanotechnology to help us with medical care. Someday you may have a chatbot type doctor to help screen you, so that if you talk to the chatbot, artificial doctor might say, okay, that doesn't sound serious, or maybe if this does sound serious, you need to be seen, something like that, to do some checking on the front end. So that might come around someday. Also, in terms of robotics, the people that you see here are paralyzed from the neck down, but through their thoughts alone, they can manipulate this arm, and the woman on the left is feeding herself, and the man on the right is having his robotic hand shake President Obama's hand. So this was at the University of Pittsburgh, and they're doing a research project on these thought-controlled prostheses. The University of Washington has a program to study brain, the interface between brain and information technology. These people were wired together remotely. They have sensors on their heads, and the person on the left thinks, press the button, and the person on the right, his finger pressed the button, like this brain-to-brain connection through the internet. This is just sort of a primitive proof of concept kind of thing, but we're trying to connect people's nervous systems to information technology, which may enhance our memories, enhance our processing power someday. There was an experiment recently done where some people were helping to, the person on the right was playing a video game, sort of like Tetris, and the people on the left could see the same images and were making recommendations which appeared in the mind of the person on the right, and this person could take that into account in playing Tetris. So we're trying to connect brains even with information technology, and we will have neural devices for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's treatment. So these are all the examples that I wanted to show you. And why are these happening like this right now? Well, we're having great increases in computing power. If you look at the trend over time, computing power is increasing exponentially. At the same time, prices are falling dramatically. So that gives us more horsepower to be able to do things with AI systems and robots that we just couldn't do in prior generations. When you look at how artificial intelligence and robotics are working together, think also about all the related technologies that work together with it. And with this view in mind, think about the example of an autonomous vehicle. It's a robot. It may have access to your social networking systems when it has a tablet computer in the dashboard. It's a mobile computer. It's receiving a lot of data, and it's throwing off a lot of data at the same time. It's connected to the Internet of Things via cloud computing. It's connected, and there might be a cloud system that's with central storage. It may have an augmented reality screen, so you can look down the street and say, oh, that building over there has my favorite coffee shop. I think I ought to navigate there. It may be using the very latest privacy and security technologies, and someday it will be connected to our body area network devices so that if somebody has a heart attack, the autonomous vehicle knows to take you to the hospital instead of wherever else you wanted to go. But the point of all of that is to say that endpoint, the car, and all the devices associated with it are part of a phenomenon of ambient intelligence everywhere. This is the trend that we're heading towards. All of our endpoint devices, and increasingly things that we didn't normally think of as intelligent, like our refrigerators or devices in the walls or our desks, will increasingly have devices that could sense, that could collect data, send it to the cloud, allow us to use those cloud services to be able to make predictions or to understand what's going on. And intelligence will increasingly be everywhere. So what could possibly go wrong with all of these things? This is a picture I took, if you can believe it, at the Pittsburgh National Airport that had an exhibit, like a museum type of exhibit, like a robot workshop. And I thought it was a pretty cool thing. But when we think about legal issues that could arise from all of this, what are we talking about? Well, these are the kinds of things that we're talking about. I mentioned autonomous vehicle accidents, but it could be medical malpractice, dealing with a lot of data breaches in the non-AI world, but we're going to have data breaches in the AI world as well. In your program materials that I gave you was my most recent white paper that I wrote last month that talked about some lawsuits that have been filed over the claim that some founders of a company, OkCupid, were invested in another company, and these founders took, perhaps without authorization, took the database of OkCupid photographs of users and then gave it to this other company for facial recognition for training the AI system. Now, was that a data breach? That litigation hasn't revealed whether the allegation is that it was a data breach or not, but there is a complaint about the possible unauthorized use of those photographs from OkCupid, which is a dating site. So there are all kinds of problems that you can see here on the screen that could go wrong from a legal perspective. But let's focus on some of the issues, the main issues that we're talking about. Like, let's start with compliance. So we have autonomous driving laws. All but 10 states have either a statute on point or a governor's executive order that talks about how to make autonomous driving happen in particular states. So if you're doing compliance work in the area of AI and robotics, maybe one of the things you'll be doing is advising your clients about autonomous driving laws. Where is it legal? What can you do in that particular state? We also have a new law in the past year. It's a very interesting act in Illinois that basically says if you as an employer are doing video interviews and you're using an AI system to understand patterns within those within those video interviews, and you're using the AI system to judge job candidates, then you have to provide a notice of the privacy practices of the employer, provide an explanation of the technology and what characteristics are used to make judgments about job candidates, and then there's a right of erasure, and there's limits on the sharing of that information. So this is maybe a trend where we'll have more point solutions, you could call them, of artificial intelligence laws that take care of particular problems. And in California, we also had a recent bot disclosure law that this is to try to get at the 2016 election problem that we had when we had automated bots that were trying to convince people with fake content on social media sites to vote in particular ways. It's basically unlawful to do that in California. It's not clear how this is going to be enforced or what the penalties are, but it's declared as being unlawful. And you can have a safe harbor if you say, this is an automated bot that's telling you this, and this account is being run by an automated bot. More general laws also apply in the compliance area. So think about the General Data Protection Regulation, the Privacy and Security Law in Europe. Basically, there's a right of explanation so that if, let's say, a bank denies somebody a loan, the human has the right of explanation to understand, why did I get rejected for that loan? And there's also a right to insist that a human give a second look, the right of human intervention, to make sure the bank gets a human involved and says, oh, I'll check over this again. Doesn't mean the decision has to be turned around, but at least the individual data subject who is rejected has the right to an explanation and the right of human intervention. We also have, starting on January 1st, 2020, the California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018, and it covers a lot of the companies that may be doing artificial intelligence work with personal data. So if you have records of 50,000 or more California households, individuals, households, or devices, then you're covered by the law, and you have to provide certain information on notice, on privacy notices or privacy policies. You have to provide certain individual rights of access to information. The data subject, the California resident, can ask, what information did you collect about me? To whom did you share? With whom did you share it? To whom did you sell it? That kind of information. And there is a right of erasure. I want you to delete the personal information you have about me. Of course, there are exceptions to that. And there's a rule against discrimination for California residents who exercise their right. The company can't charge higher prices for people who exercise their individual rights. We also have a connected device law in California. And you'll have the slides, and my program materials have the citation, so you don't have to note these down. But there's a connected device law in California that basically says you have to have a reasonable security feature to protect that device if it's going to be internet connected. So you can think robots are going to have those types of security features because these are Internet of Things devices, which is what the law is aimed at. And any device that's connected to the internet directly or indirectly through IP or Bluetooth is covered. There's also an Oregon statute similar to this. Consumer protection laws are a big hammer for plaintiffs' lawyers who are going after AI and robotics companies. It may be a different type of unfair and deceptive trade practice under the laws that you see here, maybe false advertising. These are the California statutes that would be on point. There were certainly state laws in other states that focus on this as well, but a lot of the claims that we see against companies for doing bad things with AI systems or not taking good care of data would be covered by these. Some of the causes of action that plaintiffs are bringing are based on these consumer protection laws. We also have, let's switch now to talk about transactions. What kinds of transactions are we talking about when we're doing AI and robotic transactions? Well, these are the kinds of things that you see on the screen here are the transactions that I'm working on. There are concerns about who owns the data. I mentioned software as a service being AI-based, so it's AI as a service instead of just software as a service types of transactions. Instead of on-premises software being installed, you've got a server somewhere that's running the software and people are gaining access to it. We'll have robot sales agreements. We already do have robot sales agreements that people are working on. These will become more common over time. And it may be that we'll have more marketing agreements. If you're dealing with personal data also, you do need to have privacy and security data processing agreements to make sure that information is being protected by the recipients of that information in your business deals. What about liability? We talked about liability types of claims. Well, these are very typical claims that are being brought by companies against manufacturers that build robotic systems that have accidents. And even there's a difference between the types of claims based on whether there was an accident or whether the the device is defective in some way, even though no accident occurred. So, for example, there were claims against Tesla based on the autopilot system not working reliably enough. That was based not on any particular accident, but saying, I paid $5,000 for this thing, and it wasn't worth the $5,000 I paid for it. Even though I didn't have an accident, I was damaged in the amount of $5,000. So you have some economic loss claims as well as some accident claims. And these can add up to large amounts. If we look at some benchmarks, Toyota had the sudden acceleration litigation against it for that phenomenon. GM had an ignition switch problem where the ignition switched off and people had accidents while they were driving. And these ended up being $4 billion liabilities for both of these companies. So the dollars amounts for liability can be huge. So how do you prevent these kinds of problems from a risk management perspective? Well, in your materials is my book chapter in the Law of Artificial Intelligence and Smart Machines, where I talk about product liability and risk management things that you can do to try to, as if you're a manufacturer representing a manufacturer, this is what you can talk to your client about, making sure that they have a proactive safety focus, trying to take care of the problem now for a product that isn't even done, hasn't had any accidents, so that you can win the lawsuit in the future when the inevitable accidents do occur. Making sure that there is a thorough risk assessment done to make sure you understand what the possible risks are with the product. Technical standards do help to make sure that you can say, at least I'm meeting the industry benchmark, but you want to go above and beyond that. Insurance coverage is important in order to make sure that you have the ability to shift risk to an insurer, so that you can offer your product with the ability of knowing that you're managing the amount of money that you'll pay out for these claims. And then making sure that you keep in your records and information management processes the documents that show you tried to do the right thing and take safety into account. And of course, there are always these in the litigation, when the litigation does occur, there are jury consultants and defense experts that can help you to defend these claims, and specialty bars for lawyers to be able to share information. So these are the types of risk management techniques that I talk with people about. And then when an incident does occur, these are the types of steps that you use to manage the events following that particular event. So hopefully you've planned in advance before any accident or incident of bias or data breach occurs, but you should have an advanced plan. You want to detect the problem, then implement your plan when it occurs, and then you should start with an internal investigation. It's helpful to maintain the attorney-client privilege, to use third-party investigators that are being hired by outside counsel. You also want to preserve the evidence that's involved so that there's no spoliation of evidence. And then for data breaches in particular, it may be helpful to have law enforcement get involved to assist you in the process of going after the bad folks. The last area of law I talk about is governance. When I'm talking about governance, I'm talking about policies and procedures usually, and the policies and procedures may cover any of these items that are on the bulleted list near the bottom of the slide. And what are we talking about today? We're talking about privacy policies and security policies, but in the future, we'll be doing AI risk assessments and AI impact statements. Like, if we develop this autonomous system, what's the impact on society going to be? We should be thinking about that kind of thing, because there are PR implications, there are possible regulatory implications as a result of all these. And when we're talking about the types of documents that you might be helping your clients write, policies are the high-level ones, procedures are the more day-to-day nuts and bolts. What do we have to do to follow the policy? Guidelines help people comply with the policies. You may have technical standards to understand the technology that you need, and then training materials to help people actually implement it day-to-day. So if you're saying, well, what does all this mean for me? What can I'm really interested in all this stuff. What can I do to follow up? Well, what I would say is read these books. The Fourth Industrial Revolution talks about a lot of different types of technologies and gives you an overview of a lot of them. And then if you really want to be frightened, if you want to see the sobering reality of what superintelligence could look like in the future, read Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark, which is a tremendous book. And then what I tell people is I have a secret, which is that I use my iPhone as my news source in the morning, and I read the artificial intelligence channel and the self-driving car channel, and they curate all these stories and put them in one place so that you can read and keep up to speed on all these developments. And of course, we have in the American Bar Association, we have programs and publications. I recommend to you the Law of Artificial Intelligence and Smart Machines, which is a survey book. SciTech Lawyer is the glossy magazine of the Science and Technology Law section. I was chair of the section from 2010 to 2011. A lot of my articles ended up in the SciTech Lawyer. And then every year in October, we are planning to have an Artificial Intelligence and Robotics National Institute at Santa Clara University. So local for most of you. And we'll be having another one, hopefully, if the virus allows us to happen, on October 12th and 13th, 2020. In the ABA, we have got committees in the Science and Technology Law section. One's Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. There's another one on information security. We have ones on privacy and big data and Internet of Things. So there are plenty of committees that you can get involved with. And every month I'm doing something just like this. It's a meetup. You can open a meetup account for free. And if you look for robotics, artificial intelligence, and the law is the name of my meetup group. I've been doing this for 5.5 years, and I've got all these old programs. If you look at the old programs and say, oh, that looks really interesting. If you look at the comment section, there's a link which you can click on to see the video of the program, just like what we're recording today. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to have another Artificial Intelligence and Robotics National Institute. But I wanted to give you an overview of some of the key themes that came out of the last one. And all of the issues that you see here are things that people were worried about, especially bias and job loss and what's the standard of care. If I'm going to put an autonomous vehicle on the road, how safe is safe enough? We're as a profession, we're just beginning to grapple with these kinds of questions. But I also said, what I'm perceiving is that all of us together in beginning to study this are involved in something bigger than ourselves. It's not just lawyer A achieving result X for client number one. This is helping to create something that will be society-wide by us helping our clients create safe products that are produced in an ethical fashion and in compliance with the law. We're helping prevent problems in the future that might affect a large swath of society. And think about in the future, not only the possibility of expanding human intelligence and moving us more, artificial intelligence might look like something like Einstein, but in the future, AI could push humankind and there could be machines that go even way beyond Einstein to the point of what we call superintelligence and artificial general intelligence, referring to machines that could interact with us like Data on Star Trek, The Next Generation, or machines that could interact with us and converse with us and seemingly have the types of intelligence that human beings do. That's the future of what we're looking at. And with all of that, what I tell people is, let's try as lawyers to preserve the fundamental values of justice that are associated with our profession. When you look at the left column, you see all the things that could go wrong. And certainly all of these things will go wrong in the future. There will be snake oil. There will be fraud in people selling AI systems and robots. But hopefully, as a profession, we can promote the values that are in the right column. So with that, if you have any questions, please let me know. My contact information is in the materials. And the program materials that I gave to you are, one, my latest article on privacy and security. Two was last summer's article on privacy and security challenges of artificial intelligence and robotics. And three, the article on product liability and preventing, managing the risk of product liability. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and move back into face mode. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do, Steve.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, so one of the issues that you pointed to towards the end is about transparency, and I understand that the struggle being between those who want to see a fully transparent availability or access to the engines that run AI systems to give outcomes. I mean, famously related to sentencing, for example. But if you pull back and look at the transparency issue more broadly across sort of all AI systems, where is that debate happening, right? Because we have on the other side of that struggle, companies that want to create systems, but they need to have some incentive to do that. And if everything's going to be laid open as the price for doing it, it may be difficult to get there. So where is that debate happening, and where is it at the moment?
I think the short answer is everywhere. In other words, in the corporate boardrooms, you have people talking about this issue in the development process, and people hopefully are saying to each other, if we're going to develop this product or service, we want to make sure that we understand how this works in reality, understand the factors it's using to create decisions, and making sure that we don't have biased outcomes from our system. So corporate boardrooms is one place. The halls of academia is another place, because there are a lot of academics who are looking at this issue and starting to create publications and programs about these very things, especially the criminal justice context. You have people in government who are thinking about these types of issues as well. So it's everywhere, and in the organized bar, all of our programs, we're talking about these types of issues. So where is it happening? These discussions are happening everywhere.